All right, so here a dietitian in a hospital is to arrange a special diet composed of three basic foods. The diet is to include, and now we have to go down here to get the rest of it, 400 units of calcium, 160 units of iron, and 240 units of vitamin A. And then the number of units per ounce for each special ingredient is shown here in the table. Now we're supposed to find out how many ounces of each food must be used to meet the diet requirements. How is the diet in Part A affected if food C is not used? And how is the diet in Part A affected if vitamin A is requirement is dropped? All right, so what do we need to do? Well, let's first say let's let x equal food A. Let's let y equal food B, and let's let z equal food C. Now you could have said A, B, C as well, but X, Y, Z, A, B, C doesn't matter. All right, and we're supposed to have the 400 units of calcium, 160 units of iron, and 240 units of vitamin A. All right, so how are we going to do that? Well, to get the uh, calcium, we have to take, 30 of X, 10 of Y, and 20 of Z. So what we're going to do is we're going to say 30x plus 10y plus 20z equals, and we need 400. Now for iron, we need 160, so we're going to take 10x plus 10y plus 20z equals 160. And then we're going to get the vitamin A, we're going to have to get a 240, so we're going to have 10x plus 30y plus 20z equals 240. Okay. Now we have all the items we need. Now let's make a matrix out of it. And it's just going to be the augmented matrix for this here. Now, did it say we had to write it in any order? Nah, it didn't matter what order we write it in. And so I'm thinking to make things easier, if I divide by 10, that's going to be pretty easy to put a 1 at the top. So I'm going to probably switch one of these up to the top there. But you could do it without doing that if you want to do that as well. So let's do it. Let's do it without doing it. Let's just write it as we wrote them down here. So we have what? 30x. Oops, no, I don't want x's here. I know what I'm talking about. 30, and then we have 10, then we have 20, and then we have a line, and then we have 400. And then we have 10 and 10 and 20 and 160, and then we have 10 and 30 and 20 and 240. Okay. So, like I said, I need to have this up here, I think, because I'm going to make that a 1. And so what I'm going to say is let's take a 1/10 row 2 and interchange it with row 1. Okay, so that's going to put a 1/10 of that there. And now let's say, okay, once we have that, we can start doing calculations, or what we could do actually. Let's do this. If we take a minus row 2 plus row 3 and make that the new row 3 before we do switching around, minus that plus that will give that to be a 0. And then one last thing we can do is we could take a minus 3 times this row plus row 1 and make that the new row 2. So we're kind of switching things all around as we go. So we're going to do all kinds of calculations and then put it all together in one. So now let's put this here. So 1/10 of this row goes on the top. So what's that give us? That gives us a 1, a 1, a 2, and then let's see, 1, 1, 2, and then 16. And then after that, we are going to take minus 3 times this plus that, so that's going to be a 0. Minus 3 times that's going to be minus 30 plus 10, so that's going to be what, minus 20. And then that's going to be a minus 60 plus that, so it's going to be minus 40. And then we're going to have a minus 3 times that, so it's going to be minus 480, so it's going to be a minus 80. And then we're going to take minus that plus that, so that's going to give us 0. That's going to give us a 20. That's going to give us a 0. And that's going to give us 80. Okay, easy enough. All right, so now we need this to be a 1. Okay, so that what we could do, let's see, what do we want to do? So, yeah, let's just take a minus 1/20th row 2 and make that the new row 2. Okay. And then let's make this a 0. So if we take row 2 plus row 3 and make that the new row 3, that should give us a 0 here, and then it'll put some number here. So that should work. All right, so now we have to go to the next page. And so first row stays the same. So that gives us a 1, 1, and then we had what? We had a 2. Wait, what did we do again? 1, 1, 2, 16. Okay. 1, 1, a 2, and then a 16. And then we have uh basically we're taking that, so it's a 1, a 2, and a 4. So it's gonna be 0, a 1, a 2, and a 4. And then if we go back up here, we take that plus that, so that's gonna be da, 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 da. So we're taking row 2 plus row 3, so that's 0, and that's going to be uh did I do something wrong? No, that's right. That's going to be minus 40, and that's going to be 0. All right, so it just looked really weird. So a 0, a 0, a minus 40, and then a 0. All right. Now what do we have to do? Well, we have to make that a 1. So if we take a minus 1/40th row 3, make that the new row 3, now we have a 1, a 1, a 2, 16, 0, 1, 2, 4, 0, 0, 1, 0. All right, so now we're at that point. Now we need to go and make those zeros. So if we take minus 2 row 3 plus row 2, that's the new row 2, and a minus 2 row 3 plus row 1, and make that the new row 1, then we get 1, a 1, a 0, and then we're taking a minus 2 times that plus that, so that's still going to be a 16. And then we'll have a 0, a 1, and that better be 0. And then we're having, that's still going to be a 4 because we're taking it times that row. And then we have a 0 and a 0 and a 1 and a 0. All right, so that looks to be with that correctly. Now I need to make that as a 0, so I'm going to take a minus row 2 plus row 1, and that's the new row 1. So that's going to be 1, a 0, a 0. Minus that plus that's going to be a 12. Then we'll have a 0, 1, 0, and then a 4, and a 0, 0, 1, 0. All right. So as it stands for part A, so part A asks for how many ounces of each food must be used to meet the diet requirements. So they're grams, and so it looks like we're going to have 12 grams of A, then it's going to have 4 grams of B, and 0 grams of C. Because remember, this was the X, which was the A food, the B food, and the C food. So XYZ or ABC. So that's what we have there. So now part B, then it asks, how is the diet in part A affected if food C is not used? Well, basically, if no C is used, there's going to be 0 here, so it's just going to be basically no C gives 12 grams of A and 4 grams of B, which is basically what we have here. So it didn't change anything much really. Now, what does it say? How is it affected if the result of vitamin A is dropped? All right, so vitamin A is the last row. So basically, we're going to just do the last row and get rid of it and start over. And so with that, we had a 30, a 10, a 20, and a 400. Then that was what, a 10, a 10, a 20, and then a 160. And so I'm going to say, okay, well, let's take 1/10 of row 2 and interchange it with row 1. And let's take a minus 3 row 2 plus row 1 and make that the new row 2. So it's kind of what we did the first time. So that gives us pretty much the same thing. 1, 1, 2, 16. And then we had a 0, a minus 20, a minus 40, and a minus 80. All right, so now we need to make that a 1. So minus 1/20th row 2 is the new row 2. And so then what do we have? Over here, we have a 1, a 1, a 2, a 16. We have a 0, a 1, a 2, and then a 4. All right. Now, what we need to do is we need to make this a 0. So we're going to take a minus row 2 plus row 1 and make that a new row 1. So that's 0, 1, 2, 4. And up here we have that's going to be a 1 minus that plus that's 0 minus that plus that is 0 minus that plus that is 12. Okay. Now, what does this say? Well, it says x1 is equal to 12, or A is equal to 12 grams. Now, B, so remember this is A, B, C. So B and C are requirements based on whatever C is. So let's let C equal, I don't know, again, we can use T grams, whatever that is. And so B is going to be, now we take it over, so it's going to be a minus 2T plus 4 grams. So that's going to be how much B is, that's how much C is going to be, and that's how much A is. So A is always going to give us 12. The other two, B and C, are dependent on what T is. So that's kind of the key there. It depends on what the T is as far as what our value is over here. So that's how it's affected by dropping the vitamin A piece. So we have basically infinite number of solutions as far as that one goes when we get to this point because T, it's going to be whatever. All right, so let's stop with that one and we'll come back for one more.